All right. Evan Giddings in for Darryl the Guru Johnson today. We're talking a little Valkyries. I went to my first game last night, and don't blame me, but their 9-game winning streak came to an end.
Come on, man.
Hey, here's what I'm interested in. Just philosophically. Where do you come down on this?
Okay.
All right. Just a couple things from the Valkyries. The Valkyries lead the league. They lead the league in bench scoring, 36 points a game. They also lead the league in bench minutes, okay?
Yeah.
They're widely considered to have the best bench in the WNBA.
Mm-hmm.
After a recent game against Indiana, Gabby Williams said, "We got to be the only team that has multiple sixth player of the year options," okay? Is that good?
If you're trying to win a championship, I think it's hard to, like, what was it? Like the Toronto Raptors used to be that way. Remember before they won the title against Golden State, they used to be a team that would run, 10 or 11 deep. And they had, they were successful. They won a lot of regular season games. But I think when it comes to competing into the postseason, and it's, in a way, Stein, isn't that a compliment, the fact that we're already here?
Yes.
Like, you're asking a question about what the difference is going to be between the Valkyries contending for a title and being just a really good team, which is currently what they are.
Right.
They're in year 2 of their franchise. And that's what I'm excited to talk to Ohem about. Their general manager is going to join us at some point during the 12 o'clock hour. But they're already there. And that, to me, is a compliment to the organization that a lot of expansion teams, it's what I want to ask her. Like, what was the vision for, is it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? Obviously, some of it is, the business plan, just trying to make sure that this team is sold to its fan base and to its market. But I also think when you step into the Bay Area, you better have something legitimate, like something to sell. Because if you don't, people will lose interest fast. And I think that's where the Valkyries have found a sweet spot. They're a team that obviously has the atmosphere of Valhalla. They have the show. They have the entertainment portion. That was visionary from the start. But the basketball has improved, obviously, last year to a point where they can make the postseason. And now you and I, less than 365 days past that point, are talking about what's going to get them to the next level. And that, to me, is a compliment to the organization, because expansion teams don't, we're not talking about most expansion teams like that.
Right. I mean, just from, again, like a broad, sweeping generalization, I feel like Nakase's got them playing like absolutely to their potential. And they might even be overachieving, and they've got a style that's going to win them a lot of games. They go 10 deep and they use all 10 players. But I'm just wondering if, the next step is to start to get another really good player in here. And so you can cut the rotation down a little more and basically play most of the game with your best players. I just think if you have 8 or 9 players that you're playing, you're trying to get a lot of minutes for, it's one of those things where it's a game-to-game thing of who's going to finish, and there may be challenges if that's the case. But, like, to me, the next step for the Valkyries is just, like, building on this style that they play, and now getting a couple players in here who are really good, who also embrace that kind of style and can play that kind of style. Now, maybe what they'll tell you over there is that we can't play that style with 5 or 6 players for 40 minutes a night. Like, if we're going to play that style, we have to play a lot of players. And that's why I kind of thought it was a little interesting last night. I did feel like, and I told this to my daughter about midway through the fourth quarter, I said, well, this is where the Valkyries should win the game, because the Mystics have had their starters in. They're going to play the whole fourth quarter, and the Valkyries are going to come back with some of their starters with 5 or 6 minutes left.
Yeah.
But last night's game just kind of followed a trend where the starters weren't as good as the bench if you look at the plus minus. So, I'm just wondering how they can maybe become a little more top heavy, starting 5 heavy, because I do think eventually playing 10 players is going to end up catching up with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the sample size of these 10 games, specifically the 9-game winning streak, is more what people are paying attention to. And that's why I do think they have a hierarchy. Like, Gabby Williams is their best player. And you saw last night when they needed to try to get a basket, Gabby had the ball.
Yeah.
You know, Burden initiates stuff. Williams gets the ball. Now, they missed shots, and I thought they looked a little tense, especially when, I think it was after the Mystics got a couple of back-to-back and ones and drew even. You could tell that there was a little bit of tension from Golden State. But I think they have an idea of what they want to do, but they are missing, something. And I don't know if that's a star talent. Like, you look at the 2 teams ahead of them. Las Vegas obviously has the best player in the league in A'ja Wilson. Minnesota's got a bunch of firepower. They score, I think, the second most points in the W. So it's like those teams can really light up the scoreboard. The Golden State Valkyries calling card has been their defense, and they are swarming. And so I think that, when the game slows down, and that's probably what you saw last night, it's difficult for them when they got to take the ball out of the basket. And maybe that's where, someone like Ohema, who we're going to talk to, is saying, all right, that's what we need to get next. That's what we're looking to identify, because I thought it was interesting that last season they were a postseason team. They brought back their top 4 players, and then they added Williams. Okay, well, what's the next step? Like, they're slowly building this thing into what hopefully can be a perennial powerhouse in the WNBA. And I think it's interesting that so far they've done it without quote-unquote household names, like these big all-stars that other teams have.
Well, and I think, if that's the plan, I think it's a great plan. And it's if you don't have stars because you're an expansion team, and you can't get the top players in the league, well, what do you want to do? You want to have depth. So they have depth, and they now have like 10 really good players that they think they can play at any point in the game, which is great. And they're kind of overachieving, and they're forcing their style onto other teams. And the next step is to just get a couple, get a player that's one of your top 3 or 4 players and push everybody down a little bit. And then maybe the minutes start to, aggregate more toward the better players. But I'm not here to criticize. I think there's a chance they could be doing this perfectly, where it's like early in your expansion years, you just have to scratch and claw and overachieve and win games because of style and hustle and heart and coaching and strategy. And then slowly but surely, as you get the opportunity to get better and better players, you start to evolve out of that. So I think on paper, I like what they're, it seems like what they're trying to do is, establish something in year 1, which they've done, now build on it with that style as you're beginning to acquire better and better players, but the style continues to maintain, if you can.
Yeah, and who knows, they might be on schedule.
Right.
I mean, I remember, what was it, Natalie Nakase talking about at her introductory press conference about how there are high expectations from the owner. Joe Lacob wasn't going to hire a head coach that didn't believe that they could take a team to a championship in 5 years. That's a lofty goal. That's a really high expectation. But so far, it seems like they're on schedule. You make the playoffs, something that hadn't been done by an expansion team. You look like you're going to host a playoff series this year. Assuming they play a similar level of basketball, even if they fall off a little bit, the gap between them right now and the 5 seed is about 2.5, 3 games. There's a team in between there, but they have played every team below them in the standings right now very well. Dallas, they got they have success against. Atlanta, they've beaten a couple times. Indiana cannot get over on them. So, and I think they beat them once, but like the Valkyries have had a stranglehold on the teams below them. The question is what's going to allow them to be viewed around the league as like a legitimate championship contender. It kind of reminds me of what the Warriors were dealing with in the middle 2010s, sort of at the beginning. It's like, all right, they're a good team. They play a certain style of basketball. They have they they have a special player, the Warriors did, which the Valkyries right now, I don't think can say they do. But they have an identity. And is that going to be good enough to, get over on the established powers? There's a lot of teams in the WNBA that have been there before, that have players that have that experience that Golden State does not. And I know they have some players on their team that are long established in the league too, but the point is they haven't done it together yet. And I think that's what we're going to find out this season, is how much, to your point, the strategy and the identity that Natalie Nakase has developed with this team, how far can that take them?
Well, one of the things I think's kind of interesting is, okay, let's say they've been around now for a year and a half, and the number one theme of the Valkyries, I think, has been the experience at Chase Center for their home games. And that might not be fair, since they made the playoffs last year in their inaugural year, and then this year they're third in the WNBA. But I kind of feel like, is their immediate success, which they've had, is there going to be a point where the experience and the spectacle becomes secondary to whether they're having success or not? You know what I mean? Because I don't think they're there, but I don't think they should be there a year and a half in. But the reality is
more about the team than what the game's going to be like.
Yes. I think, people are going out to see what the experience is. But now they've gotten to a point where they're third in the WNBA. Will there ever be a point where, the experience is always going to be the experience, but it's going to be about, are they winning enough? Are they exciting enough? Are they contending enough? And I almost feel like they're rushing to that point because they're having success early.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, just from walking around the city, being down by Chase Center for some of these games, I've been in the media section mostly, but I've also sat, with friends and other people. Fans are locked in. They know this team. And it's not just the season ticket holders. I do think that there's a lot of fans out there that watch the Valkyries the same way that Warriors fans watch the Warriors. It's like, all right, Kaylin Chen's having a career night like she did last night. Williams she's not really feeling it in the fourth quarter. Salon's coming in off the bench. She's a gunner getting 12 points a game. It's like, I think that there are people that are already there with the Valkyries. And what I think is really cool is that started last season, but now other people are getting to catch up. And so I know that there's a lot of gatekeeping, especially with new sports and especially women's sports, but I do have to hand it to a lot of fans. For example, I popped into a bar the other day and the game was on, and there was a few people wearing Valkyries hats. They were just sitting there watching the game. And, I hadn't paid attention to every single game during this 9-game winning streak, but I knew they've been playing well. So I went up and asked them, hey, what's going on today? What's been happening? And they weren't like, oh, come on, you want to come watch the WNBA game. It was, no, hey, actually, this is what's going on with the team right now. They're playing well. They kind of had a tough fourth quarter in Indiana, but managed to pull it out. Those kinds of things to me are inviting, and it's what helps grow, not just the game itself, but the fandom around the Bay Area. Because the last thing you want to do if you're trying to figure out where you fit in with the Valkyries, as opposed, if you can't go to games, it's like, all right, are my friends excited about them? That's what's going to get me to go, because the team now has enough legitimacy on the court that you're going to the game not just for the experience, but you're going to see an actually good basketball team. And that's where they found this sweet spot, in my opinion, pretty early on, that I don't know if they expected Steiny, but they've certainly earned our attention.
Yeah, the one thing I'm wondering about is, maybe you can speak to this better than me, but there's no way every WNBA team's drawing 17,000 at home.
No.
So my question would be, when the Valkyries, we heard there was going to be a WNBA team, and then the first stories that we heard out, were they have 12,000 season ticket requests, and there's already a waiting list. My girls asked me this last night. Dad, why do you think the Valkyries are so popular? Why do you think they've sold out every single game they've played since they've been here. Like, why? Where does this interest come from? Why is this arena filled up? And what is it about the Valkyries that has kind of interjected themselves into the sports scene? Because it's been pretty amazing.
Well, let me ask you, because that was the first game you'd been to.
Yeah.
Do you want to go back?
Yeah, I'd go back. I'll probably see a couple games a year if I could.
But I think that's your answer. It's like you go one time and you're hooked. I think that's what gets people to go back to all sporting events, is that they enjoy the experience and the time. And some of it is regardless of the team. You know, it's like people are still going to Giants games because they like baseball or they like the ballpark. You know, there's something about it outside of the actual performance, which has been paltry at best, that makes them want to return. The Valkyries right now have both. But as somebody who, you know, didn't go during the inaugural year, I feel like the energy's been the same.
Right.
Now the basketball, and they were good last year, but the basketball is catching up to the actual atmosphere.
I guess what I'm wondering is why have the Valkyries, like I agree. Okay, so I went to the game last night and my kids went and they're like, this is great. And we'll definitely go again when we can. And, you know, we'll go a couple times. But why from minute one? Why before they ever played a game? Why was there so much interest in the Valkyries? That's what like my daughters were asking. And I didn't really have an answer other than, you know, the Bay Area has all different kinds of people. There's an unbelievable diversity here. And for whatever reason, or the reasons we know, the Valkyries, you don't have to be, well, I don't want to say you don't have to be a hardcore sports fan, but there's an interest with the Valkyries with people, I think, that wouldn't typically be basketball fans or sports fans. And like they've tapped into something, but I don't know exactly what it is. But it has something to do with the diversity of the area, I think, and just the kind of the novelty of a new sport. But the new sport has managed to incorporate people that maybe have been left outside the Giants and the Warriors and the 49ers group of fans.
Well, what was the stat last year that it's like the majority of season ticket holders are different season ticket holders than the Warriors?
That's obvious when you get out there.
It feels like a different fan base.
Right. No doubt. I mean, when they're showing fans on the big screen, the fans don't look like the fans at Warriors games. They just don't. And, you know, there's obviously a different crowd in there. Obviously, the tickets are probably a little bit cheaper, but, you know, there's just something about how they've caught fire and there's been no let up even in a year and a half. And I don't know that if they weren't winning, the atmosphere would be any worse at this point. And then I'm just kind of wondering just about the growth of a franchise, the growth of a team, and as a team starts to improve since their inception, when, you know, the expectations start to come and the novelty wears off and all that. But here's what I want to really get at is me saying, you know, like, what's going to happen when the novelty wears off? It's like, well, then the game just takes over. Well, they're the third best team in the WNBA, so they don't need novelty anymore. They're one of the better teams.
Yeah, but your question of is Chase Center still going to be full if the team is not good? It's like I don't think we're there yet. I do think that there's still enough shine on the newness of the franchise that people are just excited. And again, I do think that the whole first impression aspect has been important for the Valkyries because every single piece of their rollout of this franchise to me has garnered interest. You know, whether it's the colors, the logo, the gear. I mean, you see people really like the purple and black.
No doubt.
You know, and it's something that's small and may seem irrelevant to a lot of people, but it's like if you have cool gear, okay, then people are going to wear it around the city. And then that brings, all right, well, you know, someone at my local restaurant is wearing a Valkyries hat. Or, hey, that Letterman jacket looks pretty cool that all the season ticket holders got. Like, I know people that do not pay a lick of attention to sports that are interested in the Valkyries just because of the appearance, because of how cool they seem. You know, and I think that happens for all new franchises to some extent, but the Valkyries have captured it quickly because they've mixed substance with their ability to sell the brand. Yeah. And that's where I think they're different from a lot of expansion franchises, not just in the WNBA, but I mean, it feels like the Bay Area.
I think there's also something about fans getting in on the ground floor and being the first fans of a player or a team that's pretty exciting. I think about the Warriors, and there's been diehard Warrior fans my age, who've been watching this team for 50 years and they live and die with it. Well, this team's only been around for a year and a half. So, what does that lack of a connection mean? I mean, it could mean more passion early and then it wanes over time, or maybe this is the start of something where this, franchise obviously becomes entrenched. And I mean, let me tell you what my girls were amazed at is just that, and I know people might say, well, no kidding, but you go out there to Chase Center and there's 18,000 fans there and it's a women's game. You just don't see that every day.
Well, the reality is...
And the crowd going crazy.
Well, look, okay, baseball in this town is, when the Giants are good, people show up. And they show up regardless to the ballpark, but I'm just talking about the interest of the team. The Valkyries right now, you could make a case, are more popular than the Giants because of how bad of a season they've had. When people talk about the Valkyries, it's positive. When people talk about the Giants, it's not like they're very interested in the team. Outside of... And I know we'll get into it, but what do you do at the deadline? And how's Vitello doing? And is Posey the right guy for the job? It's like all these questions about the Giants right now have to do with how do we get back on top?
Right.
The Valkyries have quickly found their way there in terms of interest around the Bay Area. And I'm not saying that they're never going to outsell the Giants or be a bigger brand, but right now they are of their popularity. To me, at least just from, walking around San Francisco, I live in the Mission, people are more excited about the Valkyries than they are the Giants.
Probably rightfully so.
Right now.
Yeah. Let's go to Austin. Austin's in San Mateo. What's up, Austin? How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, man. Hey, you know what I think it is? I think it's just the Bay Area, period. We like sports. Not only that, whether we losing it or winning, we going to still show up. And not only that, it brings, like, the Warriors, Curry and them. They bring that excitement, so we want to see that the same thing. They play, like, similar style. They play with 10 people plus people and whatnot, whether you're hot or not. So, I mean, that's what I think it is. It's just the Warriors, they bring that energy, and now the Valkyries is doing the same thing. And shout out to the Warriors for winning the Summer League, too. So, it's just bringing more in, that's all.
Gotcha, Austin. Yeah, I mean, there's probably some residual Warriors passion that's spilling over to the Valkyries, but there's also a new segment of fans that I don't get a sense go to Warriors games who are going to Valkyries games. There's not a ton of overlap that I noticed last night. I'm in that arena and I'm like, well, this doesn't really look like a Warrior game. Kids also said that there are more people. They thought there were more people in Valkyries gear at the game last night than come in Warriors gear for Warriors games.
I think that's a fair observation. But
there's
again,
a lot of purple.
Well, I was going to say the purple also pops.
Right.
But the last thing here for this segment to me is just to Austin's point, Bay Area sports fans respect greatness. They respect teams that are competitive, and they show interest when teams are good. Some people call that bandwagoning, but I also think just because of how many options there are in the Bay Area, you got to be good to garner attention. Otherwise, people are going to take their money and their interests elsewhere. And that's why, the Valkyries, again, it's a compliment to them. They've already captured the interest and imagination of fans, not just because of the brand, but because of how good they are.